talk a little bit about maybe some of the more technical side aspects of pre-production? By technical, I mean the specific tasks and work that goes into pre-production or is considered pre-production, and try to flesh out what do you really need to do for any particular kind of project. The one that always comes up that everyone always kind of hems and haws about is storyboarding. Storyboarding is difficult in the sense that everyone thinks that they need to be an artist.
Yeah.
And I don't know. At least personally, I find that for a lot of projects, it's not necessary. But Chris, what would you say about storyboards? What's your take on that?
I think it's a really good practice. If you use those storyboards for communication or anything else, it's still that same thought process. And I think just like with someone that is a really good artist in their drawing, usually they're not sitting there concerning themselves with how pretty the picture is. They're trying to work on how the communication works. And so if you're a bad drawer, if you're not good at doing that, let go that it's bad and think that this is for communication. So if it's stick figures, who cares? This is just the reason for doing it is not for it to be beautiful or for anybody to take it and think it's something more than it is. This is a guide to your story and through visual means rather than words, and sometimes a combination of both. But I think that, it helps you plan for a lot of things. It helps you go, I want to shoot outside. Okay, I'm going to need an ND filter to shoot outside. Oh, I'm shooting in a really large room. I'm going to need enough lights to light up that big room. That gets you to go through those things to being prepared for the shoot, not even to communicate the story, but might even help you. Hey, if I don't have access to this location, I have a couple backups so that I've thought through having dealt with this issue already. If I can't talk to this person, who's the other person that's going to fill in this gap in my story? If I'm doing, say, cinema verite or something like that, that if you're trying to piece together something that isn't under your control, even I think still that storyboarding of how you're going to get from one place to another as far as in your story. I know that some, my buddy Brandon, he usually finds a theme or a vehicle that helps him get through the story. Like literally sometimes it's a vehicle. I mean, I think he filmed a van driving, and it was the same van between scenes, so it always seemed like this guy was going somewhere because of this theme of traveling of the documentary he was doing. But that was pre-planned. This is how I'm going to get around this story. It's not just going to be, hey, this, that, or the other, and just one shot after another. It had places that he wanted to pause the moment, and that was planned. Now, he didn't know what he was pausing for, what's the impact that he was trying to, because the story is going to unravel as it goes. Right. But he knew that he wanted to have those imagery, so he brought a drone with him so that when he was in places that were, he could shoot this van from high above that would get him from one scene to the next because the person's traveling from one place to the next.
He storyboarded these shots?
I've seen some of the drawings of some of the shots that he got that he, I want to do a windy road. And so he had a windy road transition, and he just kept his eye out for.
He was trying to get the shot from the opening, The Shining, with a drone shot of the car driving through the mountains.
Maybe. I don't know. I didn't get that deep with him, but it definitely, I know that there's certain things that are happenstance. So, it's like, okay, I have to deal with this. Yeah, in documentary. But other times it's, and I think even in film sometimes I'm reminded, because I just watched Endgame, the Avengers Endgame, and that when Tony Stark died, it was actually an improv of the scene, and they were just screwing around, and they came up with this thing, and that's the thing. It wasn't the story that they planned. They did all this planning and otherwise, and it just was this thing that worked. But I'm sure they had the real scene as they drew it, and it just, they allowed for that improvisation to work, but they still were surely setting and blocking the scenes.
It's really rare that any project that is thoroughly storyboarded ends up just like the storyboard, has drawn.
Yeah, I think, totally.
I think we can, let's be clear here, storyboarding is important, and it becomes more important the more expensive the production is and the more people who are involved in it. But let's get real. Chris, when was the last time you drew up a storyboard for one of your productions? Right?
Never. I mean, at best, it's like I took an image of the scenes that I wanted so that I knew, so I could think about what order I wanted to shoot it in or something like that. But for me, I'm not having to communicate what I'm showing. I have to communicate what I'm trying to achieve or whatever, but I can be flexible and going, I'm trying to show this thing. There's 10 different ways I can show that, but I planned on showing it. Yeah. But when was the last time I drew a storyboard? Probably to show an example of a storyboard.
Yeah. So we do the storyboards when we were doing the Videomaker workshops. Every group would do a storyboard as part of the learning process about how to do the things by the book. But outside of that, I did one when I was in school, learning the process.
Yeah.
I did one when I was teaching other people the process.
For me, I don't have a lot of like real production experience. Like I've done personal projects and stuff, and I have storyboarded a few of those out. But what I see as a value for storyboarding, in addition to like the communicative power that you can show your cameraman, like I want it to be like this. It's another way of thinking through the project. And for me, it's hard. It would be hard to hold all of the images from a shot list in my head. So putting them down on paper helps me kind of work through them. That sounds kind of vague, but like it helps you develop those visual ideas and iterate again too. Like draw it one way and draw it next to the next panel or the next shot, and it looks weird, so you switch it up. Like it's a way of thinking rather than just like having it all in your head already and writing it down. It's more of like a process. So
here's a piece of advice I would give young people along the same lines, is that as you're working on a project, one of the best way, and I think it's an essential thing to do as you're coming up with ideas and you're working through your thoughts, is you got to put everything down on paper somewhere. Every thought that you have, write it down so that you can look at it and process what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
And, it happens all the time. Everyone does this. Your thoughts sort of flow into your head, and you always can't control where they go. And it's
or
even
what
harder,
order they show up
exactly. And it's even harder to recall not only your old thoughts, but the order that they were when you thought about it last week, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's always good as far as the thinking process to put your ideas on paper. It doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be spelled correctly.
Right, exactly.
But get everything down on paper. You can move things around that way. You don't forget anything that way. But in that process, that's why we have treatments. That's why we have log lines. So a log line is basically like a one-sentence summary of a story of a project. A treatment is like, a 2-page written summary of what the story is.
Narratives of the story.
Like with paragraphs.
Yeah.
And then the script obviously is the whole dang thing. But as you're going through this process and just getting it down on paper, it really helps you to solidify your thoughts and get them in the right order and make sure it's exactly as you like it. Even if you never show this work to anyone, putting it on paper helps you work through your ideas in a way that you just don't lose things.